also known as Ansarullah, have since expanded their control over regions south of the capital and coastal areas, which have for years been a stronghold for Al-Qaeda militants. The Houthis have cleared those regions of Al-Qaeda, helping stabilize them. The U.S. is said to consider stability in Yemen as very important, as it fears a further collapse of order in the country would allow the emergence of a failed state from which Al-Qaeda could plot terrorist attacks worldwide. Saleh supporters staged a huge rally Friday to condemn the U.S.-backed sanctions as interference in their country's affairs and to reaffirm their backing for him.
We took industries to tell the Americans that they must leave our country and not interfere in our affairs. Aliyatullah Saleh is a red line.
We say to the American ambassador and Mansour Hadi that Aliyatullah Saleh will not leave the country. The U.S. ambassador and the UN envoy in Yemen will leave for Aliyatullah Saleh because he is safe with his people.
The U.S. U-turn on Saleh may come as a surprise to both his supporters and opponents, as the White House has for decades backed the former long-time ruler at the expense of the opposition.
Welcome back. The Takfiri ISIL terrorist group has shelled a camp sheltering people displaced from the volatile Syrian town of Kobani, killing 2 civilians. According to Press TV, the so-called Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said on Saturday that ISIL shelling left 2 civilians dead and injured 4 others, including a child, at a camp for the people forced by violence from Kobani to the west of the strategic town. Syrian Kurdish forces, backed by Iraqi Peshmerga fighters, have been fighting to drive the ISIL terrorists out of the border town, most of whose residents have escaped. Around 150 Peshmerga forces armed with heavy weaponry, including anti-aircraft machine guns and mobile rocket launchers, entered Kobani in over a dozen trucks and jeeps last Friday from Turkey to join the anti-ISIL fight. We received a hero's welcome by Turkish Kurds and Syrian Kurdish refugees. Kobani and its surroundings have been under attack since mid-September, with the ISIL terrorists capturing dozens of nearby Kurdish villages and killing hundreds of people. More than 200,000 people have also fled across the border into Turkey. Now, in France, protesters outraged over police brutality have clashed with security forces in the southwestern city of Toulouse. The riot police used tear gas and pepper spray to disperse the angry crowd. The demonstration was held in solidarity with an environmental activist killed by French police last month. Remy Perez died on October 26 when a march at the site of a controversial dam project turned violent. A similar protest rally was held in the capital, Paris. Our correspondent has more from Paris.
Following the death of an ecological activist by a police stun grenade, violent protests against the brutal methods of the French police force have been held almost daily for 2 consecutive weeks. The result has been hundreds of arrests around the country, with police using rubber bullets, tear gas, and rough tactics that appear to confirm the accusations of brutality and abuse of authority. Many local governments have shut down public transportation and stopped granting permits to protesters, hoping to put an end to the issue and giving them a pretext to lead the massive crackdown. But protests were held around the country yet again despite official bans, as student activists continue to carry the torch for the slain 21-year-old activist.
In a democracy, such a death is unacceptable. What's worse is that the government uses more violence, bans demonstrations, and treats activists like criminals. Democracy is disappearing in France, and we must keep protesting.
I am also a victim of police violence, as my brother was killed by 5 bullets fired by police. The police are never taken to court or punished for their crimes. France must realize this has to stop.
The victim's family has accused the government of initially suppressing murder evidence in order to accuse the protesters of causing the death to try and divert attention from the police.
The government has reacted in the usual way, with total denial. Even though this is a systematic problem, police have been condemned by the UN, Amnesty International, and others for killing nearly 10 people each year. And those are only the cases we know about.
The controversial dam which the victim was trying to stop has been suspended, but that hasn't stopped the protests, which have always been about police brutality and the repressive authoritarian tactics of the French government. There is no end in sight to the protests because the government has given no indication that reforms to France's police force are being considered. That's caused activists across France to harden their position against the government they accuse of preferring force to democracy. Robin Mazahari, Paris.
And now, dear listeners, here we come to the end of the news from the Voice of Justice. Keep us company until the end of the program.
The Voice of Justice, bringing you accurate and up-to-date news and analysis from half of the Middle East. Our award-winning religious and cultural programs give you an insight into the rich religious and cultural heritage of this region. And you can listen to the Voice of Justice via our mobile application on your cell phone. The programs are aired live and you have access to archives so that you can listen to our programs at any time which is convenient for you. You can also get the latest news from our website, IRIB English Radio, a news leader in the Middle East.
And here we continue our program with today's commentary, which is about the Syrian people's exposure to U.S. attacks and terrorist operations. Stay with us, please.
Political commentary, accurate and up-to-date analysis of the day's news.
The number of Syrian people who lose their lives throughout the attacks of the U.S. and its allies on terrorist outfits is on the rise. This, in turn, has deeply concerned the international bodies over the threats posed against the people of Syria. Meanwhile, UNICEF has denounced a terrorist attack on a school in the Syrian capital, Damascus. UNICEF envoy to Syria, Hannah Sanjar, has said that these terrifying attacks are part of a string of raids on Syrian schools, pupils, students, and teachers, which should immediately come to an end. The envoy referred to UN figures on the death of more than 100 children and injury of 300 others throughout terrorist operations in recent months, noting that based on these statistical figures, the horrific terrorist attacks are taking their toll on the Syrian children. She underscored the need to maintain the security of the schools in Syria against armed raids, while stipulating that the schools should provide a shelter for Syrian children so that they would be able to fearlessly acquire sciences. This comes while the operatives of the so-called Free Syrian Army, in collaboration with the al-Nusra Front Takfiri terrorist outfit, in a horrendous attack killed 28 members of the Syrian National Defense Forces.